today we'll be studying two suttas, two related suttas. They have the same name, Loka Dhamma Sutta. Loka Dhamma means worldly conditions. Sutta number 1, which is A 8.5, and Loka Dhamma Sutta 2, which is A 8.6. Now here we have two suttas from the Anguttara Nikaya, the fourth collection, or the fourth Nikaya. And as you know, the Anguttara Nikaya contains suttas mostly directed to lay people. So they go by numbers. So the two suttas today have 8 items. Now Sutta 1 and Sutta 2, they are connected in terms of length. Okay? Sutta 1 is a kind of summary or introduction to Sutta 2. Sutta 2, you can say, is the complete sutta, the full sutta. Sutta 1 is useful by way of introduction. It just tells you these are the 8 conditions. They go in pairs. Okay? Pair, first pair, second pair, third pair, fourth pair. And then you have the closing verses. So in the Loka Dhamma Sutta 2, or the second Loka Dhamma Sutta, you have the opening syllabus, if you like, the list of the 4 pairs of worldly conditions listed first, and then the Buddha says something about it, meaning that is, these 8 conditions occur both to normal unawakened people as well as to the saints going to be awakened, and also the arahants. So what is the difference? The Buddha asked the monks. Of course, the monks, either they do not know, they could be new monks, or out of respect for the Buddha, they say, we are your students, so please teach us so that we will learn something. Then the Buddha explains in 2 parts how the worldly conditions arise and how worldly people react to them, and then how the 8 conditions arise to the saints and how they respond to these 8 conditions. And then Sutta closes with the 4 or 3 verses rather. So we can clearly see the Sutta 2 is an expansion of Sutta 1. So we only need to focus our study on Sutta 2. Now let us look at the Sutta, and I'll explain the words and the terms which need explaining as we go along. So we're on page 18 now. The second discourse on the worldly conditions, A 8.6. Bhikshus, these 8 conditions turn with the world, and the world turns with these 8 worldly conditions. Now notice here there are 2 verbs, 2 phrases. The 8 conditions turns with the world. Okay? Here the Pali word is Loka Dhamma Lokang Anuparivartanti. Anuparivartanti, turn, this is in the plural, so clearly refers to the 8 worldly conditions. It turns with the world. So now we have a very interesting question. What does the world here mean? Okay? Now in the suttas, the world has 2 senses. For example, in the Rohitassa Sutta, the world refers to the world of beings, the physical world and the world of beings, and then the second meaning is the world of formations. Then in the commentaries, the commentators try to make it a bit more kind of systematic, if you like. So the commentators say there are three kinds of worlds. You have the physical world, it is a world of time and space. Then there's the world of beings. For example, if we say, which is the tallest bridge in the world, which is the highest mountain in the world here of course refers to physical world of time and space. We can also ask who is the tallest person in the world, who is the wisest person in the world, and so on. In this case, the world refers to the world of being. So here's where it's very interesting, because we never realize we need to be so accurate with such words as the word world, but this is how the ancient suttas and the commentators are aware of. But these two worlds, in a sense, they're always there, and you can't really do much about them. Or in a sense, they don't exist. It's how we look at the world. But the world that we really need to deal with is the third kind of world. This is called the world of formations. So in Pali, you have what's called Okasa Loka, the world of space, and then the Satta Loka, the world of beings, and Sankara Loka, the world of formations, the world that we create ourselves through the six senses, the world of the five aggregates, and so on. Sankhara means formations, something conditioned, something we have created ourselves in manner of speaking. So that's the world we have to deal with, because when we understand how we create, how we project the world around us, then we are free from suffering. But in simple terms, how do we create the world? By processing our five senses, or the experiences of our five senses. The mind processes all this, the five experiences of the senses, and the mind also has its own internal processing. When you're looking at something, the mind kind of figures out how you should see something. As babies, we actually see the world upside down, but as we mature, after a few weeks or few months later, we actually set the image right side up, so to speak. In other words, in reality, is the pictures that we see in the world in our eyes are all upside down, but our mind kind of turn it right side up, so to speak. So our ears also hear sounds, smells, we smell things and taste things and feel. But again, we know the senses do not really accurately give us exact feedback. We have a very biased way of looking at things, actually. So, and that sometimes creates a lot of problems for us. Right? So that's the world. We create this, especially through the mind, right? Through the mind, you create ideas, religion, and so on. And you find people can swear by their religion, or even kill others for what they believe. So you can imagine how powerful this kind of beliefs are, even dangerous. So because of that, the Buddha is telling us we have to know the world, right? And the Buddha again declares in the Rohitassa Sutta, I teach you the beginning of the world and the end of the world. In this very fathom-long body lies the arising of the world and the ending of the world. Right, so when he says in this very body, there are two meanings. One, it means through your own effort you will find the answer. Number two is in understanding the nature of your body. You will see this arising and ending of the world. Well, what is the nature of the body here? The five senses. What is the body? The body are the five senses. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, and the body. The body here is a kind of narrower sense of body, meaning our sense of touch. So these are the five physical senses, our world plus the mind. The arising of the world is when we see, when we have sense experiences. The passing away of the world, when our senses begin to reach their shelf life. Right? So even every moment as we see things, they are arising and falling, arising and falling. So you have this impermanence that's going on all the time. It is through impermanence that we make sense of things. things are meaningful through impermanence, through change. Without change, we can make no sense of things. So that is the world in very simple terms. So here the Buddha says, pictures these 8 worldly conditions turn with the world. The second part, the world turns with these 8 worldly conditions. Okay, here who are the world? The world are the people. The people tend to get caught up with these 8 worldly conditions, and they are affected very negatively. They are being pushed around by the worldly conditions. Okay, so that's the meaning of this, the second part of the opening sentence. So let's continue. What are the 8? Gain and loss, fame and ill fame, blame and praise, joy and pain. These 8 worldly conditions, bhikshus turn with the world, and the world turns on these 8 worldly conditions. Right? So this is a syllabus, very clear, very direct. Now let's examine each of the 8 conditions a little more closely. They come in pairs, gain and loss. The Pali word, labo alabo cha. Okay? Laba means what you get. Your profits, your gains, things you have. It's having aspect of our lives. Laba. Alaba. Now this is an apophatic sense of the word. If you translate literally into English, it means not get or non-getting. So we can translate as not getting what you want. So it's a broad sense. When we do not get what we want, when we don't have something. So these are 2 opposites. They are dynamic, they're interactive. In other words, when you have one, you have the other. So they're kind of they're causally related. They condition one another, so to speak. In other words, only when you have an idea of something, you begin to relate to it as having it or not having it. For example, if you do not know what gold is, or some kind of new precious stone or material which we do not know yet, someone else has it, but we do not know what it is. We don't miss it, we don't know what it is. But once you know there is such a thing, people tell you, wow, it has got this, you can do this, it is like that, it is precious, and you form this idea. So you begin to want it if you see it as something valuable. So wanting, trying to, getting something and not getting something. Or another way of putting it is, when we have something, we can also lose it. When we lose it, we don't like it, we suffer. Right? So alaba can also include losing it. So they are relative. What we have, we can lose. Of course, you can, in a positive way, say, what we don't have, we should strive for it, which is fine too. Here we're not saying they are totally bad. We are saying there's a wrong idea about them. If you don't know really what they are, you're going to suffer. And we will see what the Buddha says about the inner moment. I'm giving the word commentary first. Yeah? And the second pair, fame and ill fame. You can be famous at one time, and then, or at some time you're obscure, no one knows about you. So that's one meaning. Another meaning is you can become very famous, people like you, and then maybe if you're a dhamma speaker, you're very honest and you say something, and people don't like you. They start saying maybe you are too strict, or you like to criticize people, then you become notorious, right? So that's opposite of fame. So these things, they rise and fall, they keep switching around. If you have one, you have the other, okay? Or you can be very famous and there are people who don't like you. They're jealous of you. And you get yourself into a lot of difficulties with such people, especially if they are powerful. Or they may not be powerful, but They spread rumors about you, for example. So there you are again, fame can attract ill fame. So you have this ding-dong battle, this dynamic exchange, if you like. So the Pali word for the pair is yasocha, ayasocha. Yasa means fame, ayasa literally translates non-fame. So you can translate into English as ill fame or obscurity. Both of them apply. So in Pali, you have what's called a pregnant word or pregnant term. Whereas in English, you have to tell yourself, okay, it means this and this, two meanings. So sometimes we use a kind of a extended translation, amplified translation with the square brackets to show that another meaning also is possible. Then the third pair, blame and praise. Ninda cha pasangsa cha. Okay? We may do the right thing, people may still blame us. Or we might do the wrong thing, people praise us. We get praised for the right thing, we get praised for the wrong thing, we get blamed for the right thing, we get blamed for the wrong thing. So these are very uncertain things. Sometimes the very people who praise us later on blame us. Sometimes the very people who blame us later praise us. So people can be fickle also. Then the last pair, joy and pain. Sukhancha, dukhancha. Sukha, dukkha. Sukha can also translate as happiness, dukkha as suffering. So it depends how you translate it. So it's a broad meaning in Pali. Sukha is a broad meaning ranging from happiness to joy to pleasure, right? Joy and sorrow, pleasure and pain, happiness, suffering, right? So they all contain, these two terms contain all these various terms. So in other words, when you're happy, especially if you're happy with something outside of you, say something you have, your new phone, car, computer, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, if things don't work out, then you don't feel happy. But if you're happy inside, it is something else. So here we're talking about the very things that bring you joy, happiness, pleasure. By that very definition, when they are absent, can bring you suffering, the opposite. Okay? So that is the way the world turns with these 8 conditions. In the Chinese text, these 4 pairs of conditions, they are called the 8 winds. The 8 winds blow this way, that way, and we get carried away by the 8 winds. So what do we do now? Okay, so now comes the teaching. There are 2 parts now. Okay, so the first part is how the worldly people react to such, to these winds, to these 8 worldly conditions. And the second part is to the how the wise respond to these worldly conditions. There is one more section where the Buddha asked the monks this question. Bhikshus, gain and loss, fame and ill fame, blame and praise, joy and pain, arise to the uninstructed worldling or ignorant ordinary person. Bhikshus, gain and loss, fame and ill fame, blame and praise, joy and pain, arise to the wise, noble disciple too. Right? So, everyone experiences this 8 worldly conditions. What then, bhikshus, is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the wise, noble disciple and the uninstructed worldling? Right? So, what's different between the foolish and the wise here? So, the monks who are present, as I said, they're probably young monks, new monks, or out of respect for the Buddha, they reply, Bhante, our teachings are rooted in the Blessed One, guided by the Blessed One, has the Blessed One as refuge. It would be good if the Blessed One were to explain its meaning. Having heard the Blessed One, the bhikshus will remember it. Right? So, in other words, they're saying, well, you're the teacher, we are students and we don't really know the answer. We'd rather hear it from you so that we can benefit and learn. Then listen, bhikshus, pay close attention, I will speak. So this is attention tag, right? The Buddha said, okay, here message is coming, Yes, Bhante. The bhikshus replied in assent to the Blessed One. The Blessed One said this. So when you see this line, Blessed One said this, you know the teaching, the Sutta teaching is going to start. Now comes the two parts. The first part is the negative part first, the foolish people. Bhikshus, when gain comes to an uninstructed worldling, he does not reflect thus. Now this gain has arisen to me, but it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. He does not understand as it really is. There you are. You have to reflect on this first part because this is repeated 8 times. So if you understand this once, the rest kind of is easier to follow. So notice the structure. When gain comes to an uninstructed worldling, when someone who is not wise, who does not know the Dharma, gains something, succeeds in something, he does not reflect that all these things are impermanent. Right? So, in other words, this is a reflection on impermanence. It's a perception of impermanence. So he does not understand reality. Danger is going to suffer, right? So everything is laid out in full here. So this is the full reflection. It's meant to be read as a reflection. So you can imagine many of these modern translations, they shorten everything. So for number 2 and so on, they say, when loss comes to the uninstructed worldling, etc. You're supposed to read in everything. Now, if you know the style, you're familiar with Sutta, is okay. But if you are a new person to the Sutta, it's very difficult to know what the missing words are. So here we translate everything in full. Number 2, when loss comes to an uninstructed worldling, he does not reflect thus. Now this loss has arisen to me, but it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. He does not understand as it really is. So there are 2 things there. One is reflection on impermanence, and the last line says he does not know true nature of things. Okay, let's just talk here for a while and reflect. We have nowadays young people who are very well qualified, people who work, study hard, they finish 1 degree, they do another degree, they get PhD. Some they even do 2 degrees, double degrees, very common nowadays. I mean, lots of such young people, very successful, and they are really valuable individuals in terms of profession and work. And in fact, some students might even feel the urgency that they should succeed well with all this, with the studies, right? Work up to PhD or get a double degree. And they have this single-minded idea that I'm going to succeed in life. Now, it's good to work hard. It's good to get all those degrees. And you do them well and you succeed. But if you think that that's all there is to it, if I get my degree or get my PhD, yes, I'm successful. That's only the beginning of the situation. Because once you have graduated, the next thing is you got to look for a job. You have to look, not only you look for a job, you find many young people, young graduates, they say, this is the kind of job I want. They feel as if they have a choice, right? And a few months pass, a few years pass, then they realize they really don't have a choice because everybody seems to think the same way. And there are only a finite number of jobs. Then they begin to feel, okay, it looks like I have to accept whatever job that comes. Of course, there are people who are more practical. I have wonderful friends who are really patient people, humble people. There was one person I know who finished a 2nd degree in engineering, kind of a master's, science master's level, in a very specific kind of field, a very narrow field of science. So he couldn't get a particular job with his qualification. So during the time when I was looking for jobs, I knew him well enough. So every time I meet him, I'll be asking him, what job are you doing? Right? And he does simple jobs. I mean, he's got this master's in engineering degree, but he told me, for example, one of the jobs that he did was packing. He was a packer. When I heard the word packer, I was thinking of a chicken packing. Actually, it's a packer. What he meant was pack things in the supermarket. Right? Well, at least he says I'm earning some money. I say, yeah. I say, that's and then another time he says, okay, I'm a tutor. Another time I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So the next time I meet him, I say, well, when are you writing a book on jobs in Singapore? And then after around 2 years, finally he told me, I found just the right job for my qualification, and I also found a wife. Okay, so he's very happy. So there you are. This person is patient. He doesn't, like complain or feel bad about things. Just very calm. He's a very wonderful person. Okay? I suppose in this case, he's a very devout Buddhist also. So he understands the nature of impermanence, which we'll deal with in the second part. Right. So let's come back to this reflection now. Look at number 3 now. So the first pair is gain and loss, right? So when loss comes, this person is not prepared. So he doesn't reflect that even this loss is impermanent, in other words. The third one is fame. When fame comes to a person, when fame comes to an uninstructed worldling, he does not reflect thus. Now this fame has arisen to me, but it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. He does not understand it as it really is. Right? Some people think, wow, fame is good, I got this Datuk title, this title, that title, I won a prize, famous now. A lot of people come. And then maybe we hear in some countries where you get all these titles and then something goes wrong, you lose the title. Or maybe people don't bother about you. You work very hard, you try to teach the Dhamma, people don't really care. Maybe because you're not rich, you're not well qualified, you're not famous, and so on and so forth. But you love the Dhamma, you know this teaching is so wonderful. So, of course, if you do not understand the nature of these winds that blow us around, then you will suffer. But if you understand the nature of the winds, if you study the Dhamma, you know that, you say, well, that's the way it is. I love the Dhamma this way, and I know the Dhamma is so clear in this way. And if the world does not see it that way, it's okay. But the Buddha was all alone when he discovered the Dharma. So he said that his teaching is against the current. The world's idea of what is right and wrong, all going against him. He was all alone. Then he quietly went to visit the 5 monks, taught them the Dharma, and then they understood the Dharma. And from there, the order of monks grew. So in other words, the Dharma is not about building a crowd. It's not about building a temple. Knowing the Dhamma, teaching the Dhamma is about understanding yourself. And when people listen, they are happy. And they know this is the right thing. You don't need to be a member of anything. You're happy, and then you tell others, hey, I know the Dharma, and you can be happy too. And you find the more and more people who are happy. You don't become a member of a happy club. You may or may not be such a club, but you need to be happy yourself. Right? That's the meaning of self-reliance. Okay? So here, fame comes. Then the fame goes away, or he's obscure. He feels very upset, very sad. Why? Because he thought he wants to be famous, or he looks around and says, wow, look, other people are famous, I want to be famous too. But he doesn't realize, even when this obscurity or this ill fame that has come, it's impermanent, right? So you should reflect, now this ill fame that has arisen to me is, now notice how he reflects, he should reflect. First he says, ill fame has arisen to me. Then he says, this is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. In other words, take it for what it is. Take it for what it is. Don't make it bigger than it is, or smaller than what it is. Take it just as it is. Then you understand the situation according to reality, as it really is. Number 5, when blame comes to an uninstructed worldling, it does not reflect us. Now this blame has arisen to me, but it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. He does not understand it as it really is. So here we have a situation where this person is blamed, he's not very wise. The moment he's blamed, he might get angry. He says, why me? Right? By saying why me, you're owning the pain already, because you use me or I, me, mine. You should disown the pain, let it go. By telling yourself, I'm not the only one who's blamed, there are others who are blamed also. Next, he makes the blame bigger than it is. Maybe it's just a small little fault. Maybe he's angry because someone, a superior, says some nasty words towards him. In other words, we've got to examine, what is this blame? What went wrong? What am I really upset about? Define the problem clearly according to the Four Noble Truth model. Don't make that problem bigger than it is. Then you ask yourself, okay, when did I go wrong? Now when you reflect that way, then you begin to understand better. You learn from your mistakes. This is where we can use the word failure here also. We learn from failure. We don't learn from success. So failure is a better teacher. Failure is a very good teacher if you are a good learner. Then you have praise, right? So some people, they like being praised. They feel very good if someone praises them. That's very silly because you get used to it if you are like that. In other words, you have a button, people know where to press, and you become actually the slave of other people who know your weakness. Right? So this is where, when we are praised, we just kind of say, well, I'm not the only one who has done this. There are a lot of people who have helped me. Or we understand the nature of fame. How? By reflecting. This praise has arisen to me, but it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. Right? If it doesn't reflect in this way, then he does not know it as it really is. Now the last two are really amazing, because I've not seen any religion that actually tells us this. That when joy arises, don't get caught up with it, right? Other religions will tell you, oh, there's joy, wonderful, When joy comes to an uninstructed worldling, it does not reflect us. Now this joy has arisen to me, but it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. He does not understand it as it really is. What does this mean? Joy here means happiness, pleasure. So he feels very happy. He says, wow, I'm very happy now. Of course, you could be happy. Maybe our children have come back from a long absence overseas. They have graduated in some really wonderful jobs. Or we struck a lottery. Or we have completed payment of some debt we have. Think of something that makes you happy. You feel very good. Yes, okay, celebrate. There's no problem there. But then you must tell yourself, okay, even this happiness I'm having now is impermanent. I got to come back to reality, so to speak. But that doesn't mean that the happiness is bad. It's just that celebrate it while you can. But remembering it's impermanent. A simple example is when you have good food. Okay, let's say you have come back from overseas and you've missed your favorite roja or popiah or whatever favorite food you don't find overseas where you were, sambal belacan especially. So there you are, you have this nice favorite food in front of you and you savor every spoonful. So, oh, this is really wonderful, you're so happy eating it. And after you have eaten it, you feel full. Then you stop. Because if you do not know when to stop, this very thing that brought you pleasure is going to bring you pain, right? Or ill health, prolonged pain. On the other hand, you have this wisdom, you say, okay, that's enough for me, I really enjoyed this, I'm so happy. Now I can forget about it for a while and go to other things, visit my friends, my relatives, and so on. Then you really enjoy life. In fact, to be a true Buddhist is to truly enjoy life. and to truly enjoy life is to understand that those things that bring us joy are impermanent. People who make us happy are impermanent. So we have to treasure them more. So in other words, when we realize the sources of goodness are impermanent, we begin to value them more. We want to spend quality time with them. That is why we like to spend more time with the Dharma, because we cannot always have the time to study the Dharma. It's not always that we get the text we want to study. And even when we get the text to study, we may not know the meanings of those teachings. We cannot always find teachers who are wise and compassionate and who are good examples themselves. So when we have that chance, we treasure it. How often can we, for example, listen to a talk on the Loka Suttas? How often do we have a chance to study the suttas ourselves and understand it? So we should value those moments that help us to grow, reflecting that this wonderful moment is impermanent. And when pain comes to an uninstructed worldling, he does not reflect us. Now this pain has arisen to me, but it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. He does not understand it as it really is. So when pain comes, he thinks that's the end of the world, and he thinks that it's a failure. He doesn't forgive himself. In the worst case scenario, he might kill himself. That's rather stupid, isn't it? So this is where we reflect on impermanence. And the Buddha says in the Sutta on, I think it's something like what should be done Sutta. What should I do now? What should I do now? Simple remark, simple question to ask, what should I do now? And then take the next step. Instead of saying, oh, I'm a failure, oh, I'm this, oh, I'm that. It doesn't help. Mourning doesn't help because they are not helpful statements at all. Right, so those are the 8 worldly conditions. Then the Buddha says in 4.2, gain continues to overwhelm his mind, loss continues to overwhelm his mind. It's the keyword is overwhelm, to drown him. In others, there's no control. Fame continues to overwhelm his mind, the foolish person that is. Ill fame continues to overwhelm his mind too. Blame continues to overwhelm his mind. Praise continues to overwhelm his mind too. Joy continues to overwhelm his mind. Pain continues to overwhelm his mind too. He approves of the gain that has arisen. He disapproves of losses. He approves of fame that has arisen. He disapproves of ill fame. He approves of praise that has arisen. He disapproves of blame. He approves of the joy that has arisen. He disapproves of pain. So in other words, there is approving and disapproving, liking and disliking. Thus, fallen into approving and disapproving, he is not freed from decay, not free from birth, decay, death, sorrow, lamentation, physical pain, mental pain, distress. He is not free from suffering, I say. So this is the first part. Now comes the happy part, and this is the part that we should probably reflect on. It is section 5 onwards. This is the wise noble disciple. Who are the wise noble disciple here? Well, we have quite a list of people here, because they are not just the saints. You don't have to be enlightened to practice this teaching. So here we have 5 kinds of disciples. This is found in section 4.2.2 in the introduction, page 17. In the Pasadika Sutta, 5 kinds of practitioners are mentioned. This is very helpful to know. These are lay people, by the way, lay people. In other words, you can talk of the 4 kinds of saints, the Arahat, the non-returner, once returner, and then the string winner, monks, lay people, nuns, lay women. So you have 16 kinds there, isn't it? 4 of which. So they're already they're saints, so obviously they will practice very well. But here we have 5 kinds of lay people who are also sometimes said to be noble disciples or true individuals, especially the first 4. Number 1, the celibate layman. Okay, so this is the layman who feels that he wants to dedicate his body and mind to the Dharma. So he's celibate, in other words. Now here celibate is not, you force yourself, you deny yourself sex because you think it's evil or bad or you're hurt because of it. That is not a very good way of dealing with it, because it's going to hurt you later on. It's going to really mess you up when the conditions arise. So in other words, we are celibate because we also meditate, we feel a joy of meditation, we feel mental joy to the extent that we don't need bodily joy, physical joy, we don't need sex. That's the meaning here, celibate layman. Similarly, a celibate laywoman is able to understand the nature of physical pleasure, mental pleasure, so she meditates, even attaining jhana, or feel joyful regularly on a mental level. So she doesn't need physical joy. She doesn't miss physical joy, even when she looks at pictures or situations which will entice other people. She's calm, she's, all these are impermanent, and she's in full control of herself. That's the meaning. Then number 3, you have pleasure-loving layman, pleasure-enjoying layman rather. It doesn't say pleasure-loving, it says pleasure-enjoying layman. Or if you like, you can even say pleasure-consuming layman, as if you like. But there are 2 categories: pleasure-enjoying layman, pleasure-enjoying laywomen. Notice the Pali words: kama bogi upasaka, kama bogi upasika, right? So in other words, if you think that you are unable to keep to the rule of brahmacharya, in other words the celibate rule, you can still live as a layman. I mean, you are a layman, you're not a monk or a nun anyway. So in other words, you can have relationships, partners, get married, have children, a family, or run businesses, make money within the spirit of the 5 precepts. In other words, you're practicing right livelihood. That is possible. It is allowed. You can still be a good Buddhist living this kind of life. And there are famous examples like Chitta, the householder, King Bimbisara, Anathapindika, the Lady Vishaka, and so on. And they're lay people, and they also become saints. So in other words, you have the choice of living as a layperson and practicing, understanding the nature and limits and purpose of the 5 precepts. You can still enjoy the 5 senses, right, getting married and so on, but reflecting on their impermanence and keeping with the 5 precepts. And this is very important to understand, because a lot of people have this idea that monks are better than lay people because monks don't have sex. I mean, that doesn't make sense, because a table also doesn't have sex. So we don't say a table is better than I am. Or you might say, oh, a table is not conscious. It's not that kind of comparison. It is how we live our life according to the choice, spiritual choice we have made. Because if you are a layman and you are married and you are happy with your wife, your family, and you're teaching, you're practicing the 5 precepts, and the perception of impermanence, and you go on reflecting that way, then when the last woman comes, you become a stream winner. You pass away as a stream winner. In other words, you're already sure of the way. Next life, you'll be born in a very suitable situation where you can go on practicing. Within 7 lives, you become awakened. Maybe 1 more life to go, just 1 more life. Then that is called what they call ekabiji, single seeder stream winner, or 3 or 4 more lives. That's called kolankola, going from family to family. Once you're reborn in very suitable, very conducive families. And then the last one is called the Satakatu Paraman. Satakatu Paraman, 7 at most. You will go 7 lives at the most. But remember, some of these lives are really long. It can be 1 world cycle or many world cycles if you are reborn in the heavens. So time is quite relative here. In other words, once you become a stream winner, you are on the way. Okay, you're on the way to awaken. So, if you awaken in the very next life, you become an arahant. Okay? So, we choose our path, in other words. The fifth group, they're called the good worldlings. These are the simple people you find, they're good people, they regularly come to the temple, they practice the precepts, right? So these are the worldlings who are able to keep the precepts well. Okay? But they must be told about reflecting on impermanence so that they can attain stream winning in this life. Otherwise, in the future life, you might be reborn in one of those suffering states, and it will be very difficult for us to find the dharma. Even if you're born in the heavenly world, you enjoy your good karma, a nice long holiday. It's like going for some long holiday overseas. You're not working, you're spending your money, and then when the money is gone, you get thrown out of the hotel. There's the hotel called heaven. And according to the teachings here, in the suttas, they say that if you fall from the heaven in this way, you go straight to hell. So it's snake and ladders, But if you are a saint, a stream winner, you will never that will never happen to you. You either be reborn in other heavenly states, or you be reborn in the human world in a happy state because of the nature of your mind. So those are the different kinds of lay people. Now let's look at the conclusion here. So these are very happy conclusions. I'm just going to read through them by way of reflection, and certain parts which might need interpretation or explanation, I will do so. So I'm reading section 5 now, page 20. But bhikshus, when gain comes to a wise noble disciple, he reflects thus: now this gain has arisen to me, but it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. He understands it as it really is. When loss comes to a wise noble disciple, he reflects thus: now this loss has arisen to me, but it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. He understands it as it really is. When fame comes to a wise noble disciple, he reflects thus: now this fame has arisen to me, but it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. He understands it as it really is. When ill fame comes to a noble disciple, he reflects thus: now this ill fame has arisen to me, but it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. He understands it as it really is. When praise comes to a noble disciple, a wise noble disciple, he reflects thus: now this praise has arisen to me, but it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. He understands it as it really is. When blame comes to a wise noble disciple, he reflects thus: now this blame has arisen to me, but it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. He understands it as it really is. When joy comes to a wise noble disciple, he reflects thus: now this joy has arisen to me, but it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. He understands it as it really is. When pain comes to a wise noble disciple, he reflects thus: now this pain has arisen to me, but it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change. He understands it as it really is. So this 1 to 8, brackets 1 to 8, you should read it calmly with a nice voice, and then listen to it, fully reflect on it. Then when these things arise, then you remember what you have heard. What is heard is put into practice. Next section. Gain does not overwhelm his mind, loss too does not overwhelm his mind. Fame does not overwhelm his mind, ill fame too does not overwhelm his mind. Blame does not overwhelm his mind, praise too does not overwhelm his mind. Joy does not overwhelm his mind, pain too does not overwhelm his mind. He neither approves of the gain that he has that has arisen, nor does he disapprove of losses. He neither approves of the fame that has arisen, nor does he approve of ill fame. He neither approves of the praise that has arisen, nor does he disapprove of blame. He neither approves of the joy that has arisen, nor does he disapprove of pains. So notice here, he does not approve or disapprove, neither likes nor dislikes. He keeps a calm mind. Thus, abandoning both approving and disapproving, he is freed from birth, decay, death, sorrow, lamentation, physical pain, mental pain, distress. He is free of suffering, I say. This is a very powerful statement. The Buddha is saying you can attain arahathood, full awakening by this. It's amazing. How is that? Because here, approving is another word for craving, and disapproving is another word for the opposite of it, ill will or rejection, and so on. Okay? So in other words, the roots of suffering have been uprooted. This, bhikshus, is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the wise, noble disciple and the uninstructed worldling. So the sutta, pro-sutta closes stand. Then the Buddha closes with a verse. Now some teachers think that the verse actually are very ancient. The Buddha actually spoke the verse. The verse is like a kind of a mnemonic, something that helps us to remember the teaching. Gain and loss, fame and ill fame, blame and praise, joy and pain. These are the impermanent states amongst humans, not eternal, subject to change. And the mindful wise, knowing these, sees them as being subject to change. Desirable things move not his mind, nor is he repulsed by the undesirable. For him, both the attractive and the repulsive have been dispelled, gone, with non-existent. Having known the dustless and sorrowless state, he rightly knows that he has crossed over existence. And the sutta ends there. Now you find that the last sentence, the last verse is almost identical and similar in spirit as the Mangala Sutta. The closing verse of the Mangala Sutta in KHP 5.11 and Sutta Nipata verse 268, where it is said, when touched by the worldly conditions, whose mind does not tremble, he is sorrowless, stainless, and secure. This is the highest blessing, right? The highest blessing here means arahathood, as we now know. So the sutta ends there. Now let us close with a short reflection. Today we have reflected on a very simple sutta, and this is where we should remember that even the words of the sutta, when they are complete and you listen very carefully to them in a complete way, meaning with body, speech and mind. Listening with the body means we sit calmly, comfortably. Listening with the body also means our ears are directed to the teaching. Our speech is silence, or we read these teachings and the mind is attentive to it. Then our whole being is involved in the Dhamma. Our whole being becomes the Dharma when it feels joyful on listening to these teachings. Sometimes you hear this the first time, you get goosebumps, you get joyful feeling running through your body because you heard this before in some past lives and now the teaching has come back. And you're reminded to keep to your practice. Reflecting in this way is very good karma. Better power such karma. May we find mental peace and joy and wisdom in this life itself. May we meet with success so that we can work to help others be happy and reach the Dhamma too. In this moment of peace and joy, let us share our loving kindness, spread our loving kindness to our teachers and to others who have been kind to us, to our loved ones, our family. May they be well, may they be happy. To our friends, may they be well, may they be happy. Even to our enemies and those whom the Dhamma have not touched, that they may see the Dhamma and become good people and be our friends in due course. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.